About a decade ago, a French academic wrote in a research paper that the cause of sadness among the French is their own culture which teaches them to be sad. Claudia Sanek, a professor at the Paris School of Economics, wrote that as much as the French should be happy because of their wealth and lifestyle, they are much more unhappy because of their education system and cultural mentality. However, France has an excellent public welfare system with free education and access to health care for all. In the World Happiness Report of the year 2022, France is also ranked 20th in happiness, while Finland is at the first place. In this survey, it is also important to mention that Pakistan is ranked 121st while India is ranked 136th. Professor Claudia Sanek concluded from her research that these behaviors of being sad or less happy are learned by children in schools and other forms of social interaction. And also that refugees who come to France are happier than the French who live there, and gradually as they become part of French society and stay longer, they start to become less happy. What is it like in French culture? After all, what is it about French culture that makes immigrants from other countries unhappy or less happy after a long stay? Claudia Sanek also wrote in another article that whenever the French are asked how they felt yesterday, their response will show a lot of negative emotions such as anger, anxiety, or depression. If you search the internet for the general behavior of the French, you will find a lot of material that portrays them as angry, rude. But can this happen in the country where the capital of romance and love is Paris? You may have to go back in time to find out why. Many researchers believe that what France did in its colonial era, today's French also carry the burden of its guilt. After the Second World War, France allowed refugees to settle in their country, and a large number of refugees from all over the world, especially Algeria, North and Sub-Saharan Africa, began to settle here. They were also needed for the construction and development of the country after the Second World War. However, the refugees who came to the country were settled by building new settlements and flats in the surroundings of big cities. These densely populated settlements were very different from the posh neighborhoods of big cities. The problem arose when the children living in these areas could not advance in a competitive education system. Poverty increased and so did unemployment, due to which crime became a daily routine in these areas. Therefore, French researchers talk about changing the education system to reduce stress in society and make people learn to be happy. People learn to be happy. French and protest are inseparable. Just take this small example. In March of this year, there were continuous large-scale protests in France. The protests were sparked by Prime Minister Emmanuel Macron's government's pension policy. The government raised the pension age from 62 to 64, which led to protests by millions of people across the country. Roads were blocked, power was disrupted, schools were closed, and even the Eurostar train to the UK had to be cancelled. On the other hand, the pension age in the United Kingdom is 66 years, which will be increased to 67 years after 2026. However, there may have been occasional protests in the country, but there was no news of any large-scale protests. By the way, the highest pensionable age in the world is on record in Greece, where both men and women get a pension after reaching the age of 67. And among the countries with the lowest pension age is Sri Lanka, where it is 55. So what happened differently in France that millions of people protested and held rallies? The answer is very simple, and that protest is the culture of France. The French Revolution and people power. In 1789, Hundreds of people protested in front of the fortress-like prison of the Bastille and later occupied it, starting the French Revolution. According to conservative estimates, around 30,000 to 40,000 people were killed in this revolution. The French were so enraged at the fortress-like prison of the Bastille that after burning and breaking it down, it was razed to the ground, and now there is no trace of it except for a couple of stones. Since the French Revolution of 1789, there have been hundreds, if not thousands, of violent protests in France. So far in the first 23 years of the 21st century, there have been a total of 18 violent protests, including the protests that followed last week's death by police of French Algerian Nahil. People are angry and nobody quite knows who to take it out on.